So this is a very difficult video for me to do, but I'm going to do it because I want to weigh in somebody that's a music producer that used to rap and got lucky enough to be on YouTube and have some type of following. I think you guys would definitely want to hear my take on the Kanye West Genius documentary that is out now on Netflix. But I saw it in the movie theater, I believe on the 10th. It was a Thursday, and they only showed it for one day. So my energy at that time was weird. If you actually watch my live stream where I asked people, are they willing to see it? Which most of you guys were saying no, that y'all weren't going to see it that day. And it kind of made me feel weird that a lot of people were kind of opposed to seeing it. Because if you're somebody in this space and, your platform isn't huge and you struggle with, people understanding who you are and knowing that you have some type of worth, I think this documentary will do a lot for you in that regard, as well as just show you that the biggest of stars have big mountains to move. And that's the biggest thing that I took away from watching the documentary. And I'm going to talk about some things like some spoilers and whatnot. Well, the first thing that I noticed about Kanye's attitude or his persona at this particular time, very humble. You can see that he was kind of fed up with going unheard, especially in the rap world. At that particular time in the early 2000s, we just moved away from the 90s, Notorious B.I.G. dead, Tupac dead. These are things that I didn't witness face on, but I experienced from a child, and I was just, those were shocking moments in hip hop where in a time where you had to be hard in the mug to get your music to be heard. Early 90s, late 80s, you had NWA and so forth. These people had strong movements that told a story about a specific place. Even before that, Public Enemy, and these are people that I enjoy their music all the way. The Shockley Brothers, aka Bomb Squad. Shout out to you guys. And then we're talking about like maybe NWA with Dr. Dre, and you see kind of like the same pattern. But there's always a struggle, except this right here is a documentary. This isn't Straight Outta Compton, where certain things could be played up. Though that movie was very good, this documentary just reveals a lot. And Kanye at that particular time was so different than what he is now. And it's kind of comical. It's a beautiful, tragic struggle. You can see Kanye, his vernacular wasn't where it is now. He didn't have any money. It was clear, but he made looking broke look good. And that's kind of what you got to do in this industry. Like, from my sit downs and talks with a lot of the bigger producers and some of the artists that, they haven't been on my channel, but everyone has something that is very relatable, and that is struggling, being broke, having big dreams, not knowing if you're going to eat the next day, not knowing where you're going to sleep, but you're going at it every day, and you're on it. People looking at you crazy because they don't see the vision. And granted, we all know that Kanye is a very talented music producer. At that particular time, nobody really had any faith in what he was bringing to the table, and that was kind of obvious and put on display when he played Jesus Walks and It All Falls Down for executives, and it was just like, it's an average joint, man, whatever. Not very intrigued by it. Even in the movie, and we all know, the backstory by now, if you are a quote-unquote Kanye West fan, and I'm not gonna front. I mean, you see Blueprint behind me, dude. I'm a huge fan of hip hop, and that 2001 shoot, September 11th when that dropped. So the Twin Towers dropped literally when the Blueprint album came out, which is the album that Kanye got his big break on with Ace to the Izzo, and you get to witness that moment. But what people didn't know was how bad it was for Kanye, and that is a major focal point in this documentary, a major focal point. Another thing, and another spoiler, and it's funny, you know, because what would a good documentary be without some type of jarring moment? And that jarring moment happens to be his quote-unquote addiction, porn addiction, and where he picks up a copy of Black Tail. Shout outs to all the people that know what Black Tail is about. And I looked at that part, me and my girl looked at each other like, what? Because if you know Kanye's taste in women, or you see Kanye's taste in women, you know, Kim Kardashian, and whatever old girl's name was, that he just broke up with not too long ago, a few days ago, I believe. It's like, what, Kanye? Like, you for real was reading Black Tail, and then you end up with like Amber Rose. And I was just looking at that and just laughing, because it just meant the world to see, you know, the transition that Kanye has made over the years. You know, he's a huge fashion buff, was looking, you know, you're like your typical early 2000, you know, hip hop head, oversized clothes, hoodies, and so forth, you know, and in a certain way, he had a particular style about himself that wasn't so much on the par with the early 2000 hip hop, but, you know, still kind of keeping it that way, having established himself. So this is early Kanye, man, and this is something that you guys need to see. Hell, even Beyonce in the movie looked totally different. She looked like she was from Texas, and she had, you know, the braids and stuff, you know, early Destiny Child, and she was guarding the door, Jay-Z's door, right at the front of his door. What you expect my sister to do with a man that's really out there in these streets doing his thing? You know, there's gonna be women like all over the place. All of them walking past Kanye, didn't think he mattered, and you get to see, you know, the iconic moment of him standing on stage and getting this Rockefeller chain, and that's a huge spoiler, but there's so much more to that you guys need to see. You can tell, you know, a lot of people were fronting on him. Another part of the movie, why I'm talking about, like, there's people just fronting on him altogether, that I thought was crazy, was Scarface. He played Jesus Walks for Scarface. You know, Scarface was bobbing his head or whatever, but you can clearly tell that Scarface wasn't feeling that record, and as well as the other records. Didn't even sit down and record. Those are telltale signs. And for the music producers out there, bruh, like Kanye has a moment in there where he just talks about how, you know, he was selling this beats for next to nothing. And, you know, people weren't willing to pay then. They wanted free beats. I mean, that's one of the biggest memes of the music production community is, you know, as a music producer, you don't get paid a lot. And there's something I want to talk about on that tip, because there are ways that you can get paid. Obviously, I would know that as someone that's on YouTube. But looking back at that time, I was doing music at that time, nowhere near on the level of a Kanye. And yeah, like you can see that there were people that knew that Kanye was going to be something. Pharrell being one of them, you know, and if you understand who Pharrell Williams is, by the way, which is a part of the Neptunes, and at that particular time, the Neptunes were producing like maybe 80-90% of the hits on the radio, which is a huge accomplishment in its own. But, you know, for him to be humble enough to know that Kanye was going to do something bigger than just make beats and produce or whatever, that speaks volumes. You get to see, and what I found to be weird as far as my experience in the movie theater was the amount of people that were kind of shocked about, you know, certain situations that was going down. Matter of fact, you get to see Kanye and Mos Def. They spit their verse for Move, and it was me and my girlfriend that, we was the only people that really knew the words that he was spitting and where that song came from, and it felt good just to hear that before the album dropped. And yeah, it's just a lot. Obviously, the hardest part for me happens to be, you know, in this film, when he went home to Chicago and he met up with his mom, and for somebody, like Kanye, that lost his mother, and you get to see, their relationship. And I tell you, I kid you not, it was really hard. Like, I find myself kind of struggling just to talk about it now. But yeah, his relationship with his mother was really was beautiful. Uh, you gotta give me a moment. But you can kind of see what his mother did for him, for his well-being, because sometimes the people around you that's closest to you don't see the struggle, don't care, but they're all there for the results. But his mom really pushed him to be the person that he is today. And I know a lot of people have issues with his, because he's very outspoken. And we don't even get into the really good part, like after the album drop or whatnot. And, his relationship with his mom was very beautiful. And it resembled a lot of my relationship with my mother. And it's hard. It's really hard to deal with the fact that you won't see somebody that has impacted your life a lot and has believed in you since day one, has invested a lot of time into making sure that you know that you're special. And you can kind of tell that, just fast forwarding in the documentary, you can kind of tell that, the way his albums drop from, we all know the college dropout, late registration, the graduation, and then the most jarring album, which impacted a lot of my life, which is 808s and Heartbreaks, where you can really feel the hurt, and that speaks volumes of how you should make music. Is you make music that is impactful and is your story. And that's why Kanye is very successful. I do apologize for getting a little shaken up, but yeah. But as far as the documentary goes, it was a really good documentary, and it was a really good documentary for the fact that you get to see a person that works extremely hard, because what a lot of you guys don't understand and don't weigh in, and shout out to DJ Speedy for this one, this diamond right here. He's like, man, we work extremely hard, 24 forever, 24/7, and we try to jump on these opportunities live. It don't work out, and you never really get to see the money, the true payout for it. Yeah, a lot of cats get a lot of money and stuff like that in this industry, but we work extremely hard to get it. So if you're out there and you're struggling and you're trying to create music, I recommend this documentary, because you get to see the absolute struggle. That's it. So check it out. It's already out on Netflix, and I recommend you see it, even if you don't like Kanye, because you're gonna get to understand why he is the way he is, and partly, and part of it is because his mother pushed him to be confident in himself, if not arrogant. And yeah, it was a huge change in his life that he needed. Another thing you get to see is when Kanye started to see a little bit of fame. You saw a lot of his homies kind of turn against him, you know, mentors and so forth. Because even with, I think the hardest thing for a lot of people in general is to see somebody living their best life or going to or reaching a plateau that they haven't, and they feel entitled to some of that success and then when you give people the shout outs and the love, uh, it's not enough sometimes. And it's kind of that quote unquote crabs in a barrel effect. And it's hard, you know, even when you're from a certain block and I've went through this myself where I've had homeboys, you know, they kind of just, you know, it seemed like everything was all good, and then behind the scenes it wasn't all good. And then you just got to understand to love people from a distance. And not everybody is perfect, obviously. We're not perfect. And you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. And that's a huge part of the documentary, too, is you get to see his mentors kind of like turning against him because of the opportunities that he was starting to see within the industry at that time, which absolute struggle. Absolute struggle. Me coming from that era and having to be on this platform, it's great to be able to share that kind of a struggle with you guys. And this, it's hard.